What happens when a high achieving entrepreneur hits burnout, questions everything, and decides to rewrite the rules of success? On today's episode of The Grounded Leader, I sit down with Paula Ruton, a former co founder of a thriving packaging prototyping business who courageously walked away from the boardroom and into the healing world of Ayurveda. Today, she's not only an Ayurvedic practitioner, but also the creative force behind Ayu Chocolates, her handcrafted Ayurvedic chocolate line tailored to your unique doshic type. But Paula's story didn't begin in balance. At the height of her career, she found herself burnt out, unwell, and disconnected. The turning point? Realizing she was living out of alignment. What followed was a courageous unraveling, stepping away from a company, confronting stereotypes and skepticism, silencing her inner critic, and reimagining success on her own terms. Today, we talk about the messy middle, the unraveling, and what it takes to choose wellness over performance and purpose over pressure. Welcome to this episode, Paula. I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, Shweta. It's so much of an honor to be here. What a great opportunity.
My pleasure. I'm thinking about your chocolates, but I have so many questions for you because I think this episode is so important, Paula. Lot of us, there was a time even I thought, what you do is what you'll do until you die. People have these labels and stereotypes about, oh, but I'm a business owner, or I am an educator, or I am a doctor. And so even if you're burnt out or it's no longer fulfilling you, we are allowed to change. The world doesn't hold space for change and people evolving, right? And you and I were just talking about that, how what that can feel like when one person within the family changes or within the friend circle changes. I knew a colleague who said, when she stopped drinking, all her old friends were like, okay, bye bye, we don't know you any longer. So, the world doesn't hold space as much for change. And you didn't care about that. You said, this is what I'm going to do. Um, but here is my big question. I'm sure it wasn't easy, and we'll get into the messy middle that you talk about. But was there a specific moment or a symptom that made you realize something needed to change? And also walk us a little bit of what your life looked like rather, at the peak of your previous career.
Well, I guess I can start at the peak of my previous career. Um, I lived kind of a relentless workload.
Hmm.
My life was a whirlwind of long hours and periods of high pressure. I often worked from 2:30 in the afternoon till 12:30 in the morning or later to meet tight deadlines that clients had for critical meetings in the morning. So I was very stressful reality because of that. And I had an erratic sleep schedule. I relied on coffee to get through the late night shifts, and I often ate dinner while working just to keep up. So I felt like I had a cost to my health through that because my physical and mental health took a serious hit. I had frequent migraines and digestive issues and constant anxiety. Um, I'd exercise, but exercise was non-existent. And my overall well-being was a low priority with the exception of healthy food and vitamins.
So let me pause you there for a second, Paula. So,
Mhm.
two things. Can you talk about a little bit more about your work? Like, I know you were an entrepreneur and you ran a very successful company. What
Mhm.
did your job look like? Because I feel for anyone who's listening to Paula's story, you might be in a leadership position and you might think it's like, I have to do this. There is no other way. And even if you walked away with like two things that might be helpful to you today, this conversation is worth it for both Paula and I. So can you tell us a little bit about your work and also getting to bed at 2:30 a.m.? Wow, that's going to be intense on a cellular level, right?
Well, it was, and it's the ironic thing was I am not a night owl. So it
Mhm.
was it was so hard. So so I started this business because I am a graphic designer by trade.
Okay.
I did many types of graphic design And I would move to an area that didn't have a lot of opportunity to print things from somebody like me, like a graphic designer. So my husband and I opened up a business that I helped print things, and in any type of files. I did all sorts of printing, but also design work in the early days. And so people would come in with requests and I would just figure out how to do them. So there was a pressure of that just to do whatever they needed. That might be printing for a presentation, it might be creating a logo or a website. I did all of those things, embroidery. I did anything that came in the door that had needed a graphic design file. So, and that was something that I did in previous jobs. I had accumulated all that experience and that knowledge. So it was nice to use it all, but it wasn't like I was using the same muscle every day. It was a different muscle every day because it was using different types of experiences. So I was not a leader, and I went to school to learn how to do graphic design. I didn't learn how to manage. So
Mm.
managing people was different. Managing my time was difficult. And then to add to that, as an entrepreneur, you have to learn how to deal with money, to create systems, whether it's for accounting or when orders go through, what do you do first, second, and third? So I had to create systems. I had to do the accounting. I had to talk to clients. I had to invoice. I had to email things. I had to produce things. I had to manage that. So it was a lot of plates were spinning all the time. So I wasn't, and
Mm.
now you add staff. So now I had to figure out how to teach them, but I only knew how to do it myself. So over in the early years, it was very stressful because we had to figure out what the business was doing, and it evolved. So one things that we did then are not at all what we do now. Now we produce things from designers from all over the world. So it didn't need the design side that I had brought to the company at that point. So that's when I decided it was safe enough to change careers. But it's stressful trying to figure out, and I wish I could say I was a leader, but I was a manager, and I was a poor manager because I couldn't really help myself.
That's so vulnerable and so beautiful of you to be so candid. Like you were in a leadership position, but schools, not every school or not every degree. Sometimes life teaches us how to be in a
Mm.
leadership position, right? So you had
Mhm.
the skill set, you had the degree, you knew how to design things, make them pretty. But like all of a sudden, now you're managing teams and there are these client deadlines. So, and I,
Mhm.
I was going to ask you this question, but you answered you're not naturally a night owl. So that must have
Mhm.
been taxing your system to stay up till like, you know me, I don't do late nights. And if I do, I am like an insufferable fool. So, like to stay up, were you drinking more caffeine? Like, how did you? Because I'm thinking all of that might have impacted how you showed up to your staff.
Oh, absolutely. I was because of the caffeine that I added to my daily diet just to stay awake. My husband's a night owl, I'm not. And so at that point, it was easy for him, very much a struggle for me. So I was on edge all the time, and I got irritated all the time because I had this high um, anxiety from the caffeine. And now I don't have any caffeine in my diet, and I know it's a bad thing. I get heart palpitations. So I know caffeine's a no-no, but I did it back then and I overdid it every single day, even on the weekends, because I would get caffeine headaches.
But also it becomes a habit. And,
Yeah.
I mean, I love my cup of coffee. I'll have a cup of chai here and then, but enjoying it and choosing it versus
Yes.
becoming habituated, they're two
Mm-hmm.
separate things. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's very important for people to know. Like, we are not judging or shaming anything. And very often, for those of us who don't drink alcohol, you think caffeine is a better choice,
Right.
because
It's an acceptable choice.
Yes, that too. Because if you're doing
Yeah.
substance abuse, alcohol is better than that. If you're doing caffeine, it's better than alcohol. We tell ourselves these stories, and Ayurveda always tells us everything in moderation. We
Mm-hmm.
are not talking about substance abuse, but like even alcohol in Ayurveda, the 4 ounces, the medicines and whole separate conversation. But I think when you are that stressed, and I can't get over the fact like you were going against your circadian rhythm,
Mm-hmm.
So what was that one point? You've shared so many, and thank you
Mm.
for that. Stories about how you felt with your staff, your body, the anxiety, heart palpitation. But and I mean, setting up a business, like you said, is not easy as a fellow business owner. I know, like you plan, this is what I'll do from 9 to 12. Something opposite from a whole other side shows up from 8 to 1. And then you learn to roll with the punches. And that's why I think grounding activities are so helpful. But was there that one turning point, Paula, where this was like, holy smokes, I can't do this any longer? And that to you now as an Ayurvedic practitioner, like, yeah, that's what when people say burnout, that's what it is for me.
Well, yeah, there were a couple of things. This probably happened. I had so at the of it, I really struggled. So it was about 15 years into the business, and I just struggled with everything. So we were able to reduce our hours. So I would go in at 4:30 and end at 12:30, and usually be 1:30 or 2:30. So we shortened it by a couple hours. It didn't help. My anxiety worsened. I couldn't sleep. But I also found that I would wake up with hot flashes. And I didn't know what that was. I know it was it the anxiety that was causing it. So it took me a while to figure out that I was probably going through menopause, and I didn't know that.
Mm.
So my age kind of forced me into it, but that anxiety was it was panic attacks all the time, and I couldn't figure out what the source was. So at that point, I still, kind of at a point where I was trying to find things. I had my ears ringing. I had, um, constipation that was so bad that I went to, I had them all checked out and nobody could say there was anything wrong. So, and I said, what do I do? And they said, well, you could take Miralax for and I said, okay, for how long? They said, for the rest of your life. And I went,
Yikes.
this is not, I can't do this. So that's I felt like a shell of myself at that point because I just couldn't do it any longer.
And I think I want to go back to the point where you said about leaving a company and then come back to your journey to Ayurveda. You
Hmm.
mentioned, like at one point, you said, I just can't. And I think it takes a lot of courage to prioritize you and to prioritize your health in a world which is so okay with not doing so. Because
Hmm.
very often we think, oh, self-care means going to a spa. Self-care is dinner out with a girlfriend. Self-care is something materialistic and indulgent. It's not something affordable and accessible, which has to be good for you on a daily basis. And career changes. Sometimes they are a big part of self-care. What were some of the fears and challenges you faced during this transition? I can't imagine, being the successful business owner, leading this intense life of really not feeling connected to your mind and body with the anxiety and the constipation and all that. And then you're like, but I've also built this, I'm going to walk away. What did that feel like? Did you have enough support? What was your inner voice like? I know there are too many questions, but I think they all
Mm.
lean towards the same answer.
Well, I didn't know it at the time. I mean, I had this internal pressure building and I just was struggling. I didn't have the words for it that I do now because I've done a lot of inner work and I didn't even know what that meant back then. But I had a lot of fear, and I would say that I had fear of being judged. I was worried about how it was looked, how people would see me and thought that I was selfish and disloyal
Mm,
you know, especially for the co-owner and my team. I was incredibly loyal to them. And I thought there was going to be a fear of abandonment, of me abandoning them and them, abandoning me. So it went both ways. I felt a strong responsibility to the company and the team I helped build,
right.
and how to walk away from that. So it was a fear of unknown because I was concerned about my ability to even make it on my own at that point because I had so many years of not having to think about that side of the building of the business in my life. I didn't really need to. And so it was a challenge, And then challenge wise, I felt like I was emotionally exhausted. So I just, I didn't have a lot of strength left in me, mentally and emotionally. I was so drained, pouring so much effort into the business, and I just didn't know what to do with that.
Wow. So if I'm hearing this correctly, Paula, it's almost like you reached a tipping point.
Mm,
Right? That's
yeah.
happened to me with my health once. And that tipping point changed everything when I was in the ER, right? And I'm glad that didn't happen to you. But sometimes, and I would encourage people to ask deeper questions. No one is recommending. I say this when Paula and I are not saying just
Mm,
wrap up everything, quit, and move out. No, but start questioning what nourishes you. What are the alternative financial arrangements? uh, these conversations have with your loved ones. I'm not saying do that in silo, because we spend so much of the day working, and if it's making you sick, there are deeper questions and answers that need to be addressed here. It
I-
doesn't necessarily have to be that way. So even in Paula's case, from what she said, she reached a tipping point, like to build something so beautiful, and that doesn't feel fulfilling, not because of the work, it's because of how sick it made you.
mhm,
And I think,
absolutely.
like you said, and there are all of these, and women more than men, this is science, this is not me saying it's like have a different, we built differently, right? So that
Mhm,
sense of loyalty, we have the sense of loyalty, attachment to take care of, we are nurturers. So even the staff and the employees, it's like, oh, am I abandoning them? Instead of saying I'm choosing me. So maybe we also need to shift that narrative where choosing your health shouldn't be selfish. It should be almost like imperative or radical or revolutionary, just like rest, that level of self-care. So let's go back to what you were talking about, Paula. Like you were going through all this, you're talking to doing all these tests, and they tell you, oh, we'll put you on Miralax. Was it the one that you said?
yeah, that's
For
just
life.
that's for like for constipation.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the rest of your life.
So then how did you find Ayurveda? Like from this
Mm,
extreme school of thought, like let's put you on it's as Ayurvedic practitioners, we tell our clients all the time, right? If you need coffee to go to the bathroom in the morning for it, that is constipation. So Ayurveda approaches health and wellness and anything we put in our bodies very differently. So how did you chance upon Ayurveda? And once you've found Ayurveda, how did your relationship with yourself begin to shift?
mm. Well, Ayurveda I didn't know it at the time, but it was really helpful because I grew up uh, taking vitamins and supplements. I worked in health food stores, and so I was comfortable in that, but nothing was working. So my initial discovery was through an herbal supplement for anxiety, and then another one through for a menopause, and it helped me sleep. It dropped my anxiety, and I was just blown that it curbed it, it cut it. I should just cut the edge off, and that was enough for me to manage to survive and give me time to figure out what the heck was going on because I didn't have any of these words at the time because I just I wasn't built, I wasn't brought up to take care of yourself in that way. It was take a vitamin and go on with your life. It's like take a pill, it's take a natural pill and go on with your life. So it really didn't change that. So when I did find that the herbal supplement helped, I was curious with what is Ayurveda. So I looked it up to realize it was a whole medical system from India, and I'm like, wow, this is not that I've come across, in the US. So I need to learn more about this. So I explored online and I found a company that had a dosha test and they also sold a kitchery kit. And it was that's what changed my life. Cooking, it's an Indian gruel. I think that's the best description of it. And I cooked it daily for my lunch, and that alone changed everything in my life path, basically, because I finally found nourishment. It was not just for my digestion, but it also was for a handful of people on my team. So when I would go to work, I would make this kitchery in a pressure cooker and share it with them. And I knew they were under a lot of stress and anxiety, and they were consistently told me it was satisfying and helped their digestion, even just one day. Like I did it every day, but just one day a week that I would bring it in, and they would see the difference the next day and tell me. and they were so calm afterwards. And it was just like me nurturing them with, some food that they don't have to go buy. They didn't have to make. It was just there. It was just a nice reparenting. I liked that. And it showed me the power of this simple practice of just eating this one pot wonder. I loved it. I
So,
still love
it's
it.
it resonates with me, how much
Mm,
I love my Ayurvedic khichdi, but it's so
mm,
interesting. We didn't even talk about this,
mm,
but leaning into Ayurveda is almost like your own leadership style has evolved. From, when you said, like you've shared this before, where
mm.
you didn't like how you showed up to your staff, to you being that person who embodied kindness, nourishment, well-being. And so well-being for us Ayurvedic practitioners is your mind, body, consciousness are balanced, right? And you're bringing them not just food, something that helps with their healing, with whatever they needed heal on that day, in that moment. So
Mhm.
it's incredible to me how, without even making like this conscious effort, subconsciously your leadership style evolved.
Oh, I mean, and we kept it was brought up like we didn't go to management school for this, and that's why we're struggling with the staff and all that. But, but I also learned that, success is not that, so in the past we would have these discussions about success, and it was kind of defined by external accomplishments, and it always made me feel empty and lost because I was unable to take pride in the achievements we did because I just lost a sense of myself in this. In the whole process, I just couldn't identify anymore of myself in this group, in this company. But at that point, I didn't know how to prioritize my well-being or stand up for my own needs. But now, and for all the inner work and Ayurvedic work that I do, I know success is a holistic measure. It's honoring my it's not just in it, bubble and pull people in because if they can just try one thing, one piece of chocolate, one bite of kitchery, and they understand that I'm taking care of them, I'm present, I'm there for them. That to me is a true sense of purpose and fulfillment. So things for me, rather than grand, it's just going down to that bite or that moment.
And I love that because that is what Ayurveda embodies. One tiny small change, one little shift, and then
Mm-hmm.
very often when people think health and well-being, they're like, I'll run a marathon, I'll do a triathlon, I'll stop eating this, I'll only eat kale salad. It's not sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
What if instead of 5 cups of coffee a day, you cut it down to 2 cups for the first
Mm-hmm.
2 days? Then cut it down to 1 cup, right? And if you love it so much, and if it's not making you sick, enjoy it because you also live one life. But if it's making you sick, then maybe in the fourth or fifth week, find an alternative. And I think a
You're
part
so
of it,
right. You're
right?
so right. Well, and it's I guess it's the mindset that you have. So if you drink that cup of coffee and you truly love it, then it's actually going to nourish you. But if you're taking it mindlessly and you're just, having two or three or four, it's not doing the same thing. It can't do the same thing.
Absolutely. And, as Ayurveda tells us, the same thing can be poison for you today and nectar for you tomorrow. So it
Mm,
depends on what you need, what your imbalances are. So, the what would you say, Paula, to this high achieving person who's feeling stuck, sick, or silently struggling right now? If is there one word of advice? I know how much you've leaned into
mm,
Ayurveda and how that's changed the narrative of your life, your career, and now you're helping others. Yeah, because I feel like a lot of our listeners, these are people in leadership positions, C-suite employees, busy professionals, entrepreneurs, all of them. And sometimes they think there's only one way to be successful. Busyness is success. Busyness is productivity. And, less sleep is a sign of success. Or too much, or getting adequate sleep is a sign of weakness. And I think both you and I would like to change that narrative. Like, good sleep, good elimination, those are signs of success, right? So, what would you say that one thing
Oh
for
yeah.
a high achieving person?
Well, and the Ayurveda got me to this point where I could put these words together. So I couldn't have done it without going through balancing my body to balance my brain, to balance my emotions to get to here. So it's a long path, but I would say to a high achieving person that feels stuck to a, you're not alone.
Mhm.
And it's completely normal to feel this way when you've outgrown a situation, and you have to listen to your inner voice, and that takes courage and for you to be honest with yourself and to ask, does this align with my highest potential? And your heart already knows this answer, but just to acknowledge it without judgment. And then if you feel like you need to make a change, you need to act with courage. Allow yourself to be scared and do it anyways. Because, if you ignore it, you're building up this resentment and this anger and this fear, and it manifests in other areas. And that's what Ayurveda shows is that mental and physical health is so connected that we have to address things. It's, the body's telling you you're stuck in something and you have to make a change, whatever that.
And thank you for saying that so beautifully, Paula. And I think very often, I know I've made that mistake where you think this is it. But nothing has to be that set or final,
Mm.
especially if it's detrimental to your health. Because eventually it catches up. We lose our health. The job or that business or everything that you worked so hard for, you might lose that. If you don't have your health, how can you show up to work, right? You might end up losing relationships. If we become that person who's toxic, always angry, never in control of their words, who wants to socialize with someone like that? So everything that we think, oh, I can't walk away with it and keep continuing to be in that toxic space, whatever that looks like for an individual, is actually taking away from the life and that you're meant to live. And remember, not everybody gets to get old. So it's a privilege to be alive, and it's not selfish to ask these beautiful questions about should it be this way? Why am I feeling stuck, sick, and why am I struggling? Get the help that is out there. So before we wrap up, Paula, can you tell us where people can find your beautiful chocolate creations? Are you chocolates?
Sure. I've there's the easiest way would to find me on ayushift.com. It's where I sell chocolates that are um, personalized chocolate tailored to your specific needs, whatever those needs are. I mean, I work from my experience, so the early chocolates that I created are to handle anxiety and to handle women's issues like PMS and menopause, as well as digestive discomfort. So those are the things that I kind of started with, but I constantly find a way to apply it to new conditions because there's so many similarities, but everybody's built differently. So that's the beauty of it. And the flavors are beautiful.
Yes, they are, and I've tasted them. And speaking of PMS, when I was PMSing, Paula gifted me a beautiful box of chocolates, and then I bought some from her, which had rose in it. Because you know what?
Hmm.
Ayurveda will tell you rose is really good for reducing heat in the body, and excess of nothing is good. That's the other thing. So
Mm.
I will share the link to Paula's Ayu
Okay.
Chocolates, where you can order them. Loved Paula's story? If you're a high achieving leader feeling burnt out, stuck, or simply out of alignment, this episode is your invitation to pause and reflect. Listen now to discover how Ayurveda helped Paula rewrite the rules of success and how it can support your own transformation too. Ready to ground yourself in wellness over performance? Tap follow on the grounded leader and share this episode with a friend or colleague who's ready for a more sustainable way to lead. And don't forget to explore Paula's handcrafted Ayurvedic chocolates at Ayu Chocolates. Like I promised, the link will be in the show notes because healing can be delicious too.